I do a little intro, okay? Just bear with me.
On your lead.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Tortilla Talks. Today I have my friend Jedi. We are going to be talking about uh, independence, codependence, and interdependence. There are three different things that are very different and are all connected. And we're going to talk about how it affects our mental health and just how we go about living through these things ourselves, as young adults and people that are just living. So, Jedi, I have a few questions for you. And I just want you to answer as honest as you can. In your relationships, as a son, a brother, a friend, do you feel you're more independent, codependent, or interdependent in those relationships?
First off, I just want to say thank you for having me, and thank you for using your platform to kind of talk about a subject that is often not talked about in mental health. And so I feel pretty honored to be on your little show here. But I would consider myself pretty independent. I wasn't always like that. As a kid, I was very codependent. I was a scared kid who frightened often, and so I relied on other people to be kind of like my shield. And I would say that, over time, just having good leaders around me and people who I brought into my life and people who were just around that, saw potential in me, mentors, leaders, just people who were around, they gave me confidence through their belief in me. And so I started to grow into being a independent person. But I think that, in my formative years, definitely was codependent on a lot of people to be kind of that shield, I guess, especially in social settings.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Definitely, I relate a lot to that. Personally, I've always kind of been independent, and that's just because of how I was raised and the situation I was raised in. Now I'm a bit more codependent. Now I'm a bit like, oh, you're my friend, like comfort me and everything. Like I'm very much, I rely on people, but not just in certain areas. I think just in certain areas when it comes to like, if I'm feeling a certain way or if I'm having a bad day, I try to keep that to myself, and I'm very independent in how I deal with my emotions. But I try to also understand that, it's important to balance it out and like be a little bit of both. Do you know kind of like the definition of each one of these words?
I can take a wild guess, but you should probably refresh my memory since I feel like you have the definitions right in front of you.
I got you. I'm ready.
Let me be dependent on you for the definitions.
Okay. Independent just kind of means like you rely on yourself a lot. You rely on yourself to get things done, and you know that like you believe in the fact that you're going to be there for yourself. And sometimes it can go so extreme as to thinking you're the only person that can do something for yourself. Codependency is when you rely on others to do things for you or for you to be able to do things. Like someone has to motivate you, or someone has to be the one to tell you, like, yeah, you got this, like, go do this, go do that, like, you're fine. Or in certain relationships, they can't do anything without that other person being there. Some people can't sleep, like in marriages, eventually, I'm guessing, like, you can't sleep without the other person being in the same bed as you, right? Like, that's a form of codependency. And interdependency is a balance between both, where you are able to do things on your own and capable of taking care of yourself, but you're also there for other people, and you can accept other people's help for you. So to be in an interdependent relationship is to, like, I guess, meet each other halfway in everything that you do, but also be confident enough that you can do things for yourself. So that's what like that means, and that's the topic that we're going to be talking about today. Um, what's the Have you ever seen an unhealthy form of independency?
Yeah, I think I've displayed some unhealthy like dependency problem. Man, like after reading the definitions, I'm like, man, I gotta do some self-evaluation. No, I think that, you know, where do I take this? I guess like, growing up in an immigrant household, you see certain tendencies, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more in depth later, but you know, through relationships and through kind of the people that you uh, are placed in front of, whether that's family or friends, some of these uh, dependencies definitely show up. You know, I've seen it in marriages before. I've seen it in friendships before, and over relying on people can become really unhealthy. But at the same time, I've seen being self-reliant become really unhealthy as well, where it destroys relationships, it destroys friendships because of a singular person thinking their way is everything, and so yeah, I've definitely seen some examples of it showing up in my life, and I've seen that, I've seen the negative effects for sure of certain dependencies.
Yeah. I think a big example, um, I had a friend a couple of years ago, and she was my best friend at the time. Now that I'm older, I evaluate that relationship and I realize that it was not a good friendship whatsoever. But when I was in that friendship with her, um, I relied on her for everything. I could not go anywhere. I could not hang out with anyone if she was not there. And I felt the need that like she had to validate everything I did. And if anything upset her, it was like, okay, Jennifer, like you need to stop. You need to
Mm.
make sure she's happy. Make sure like she feels like she's doing great. Um, and that's it's really bad because like I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't loving myself. I wasn't being the best me that I could be. Um, and it like took me so long to get out of that friendship, and then once I did, I was like, damn, that was not okay.
Yeah, like friendships are one of those weird things where it's like, I don't know, I find that people are kind of like intentional in every other sphere of their life, but like friends are kind of like one of those things where it lacks intentionality, where it's like, oh, these people are people I grew up with, or these people I went to school with, and so yeah, I guess these are my friends. And oftentimes, your identity can be attached to certain friend groups, and especially when it bleeds into relationships. I had this experience myself where you're so codependent on this your significant other, your partner, and you forget to build your own identity and have your own passions and have your own kind of life out, that exists outside of this shared kind of partnership. And I think that when we're talking about codependency, it's so easy to lack boundaries in kind of these spaces, and I think that's where the danger comes in, right? And so when I think about codependency, I have an amazing friend who I won't say his name, but he's an amazing friend, and he's always talking about boundaries and how we can set healthy boundaries. And that's something I try to implement in my life, where it's just like, I like to bring people into my life that I think bring value to my life, that I care about, and I have shared interests with, and they're passionate about things I'm passionate about. But also setting healthy boundaries to say, these are people I don't want in certain aspects of my life, right? And so being intentional about that. I'm a friendly person, but I have levels to my friendship, and I'm like, I know who can go into my inner circle. I know who can go into my outer circle, if that makes sense. And so I think I just learned that probably through him, and just setting healthy boundaries and understanding who's allowed in your inner circle, and then who's existing in that, you know, outer ring. And it doesn't mean they're distant, you know, or indifferent in your relationship with them. It just means that, you know, you're setting a parameter, you're protecting your energy, you're protecting your personal space and your mental health. And so I definitely believe that, you know, that's a really big issue. And I think that oftentimes, you know, it just lacks intentionality. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you're like spot on. Like that was perfect for you to say. Because honestly, yeah, like we think about these things and we want people to like us, so we bend over backwards for them, or we feel like we have to be very indifferent, which is a word you just used. We have to be very indifferent towards other people because, you know, we think like we've gotten hurt too much, and so like the only person I can trust is myself. But I think that like the inner circle and the outer circle example that you just gave, like that's perfect, is knowing who you can trust and knowing who brings value to your life. And then just, you know, everyone else, it's nice to be nice to everyone. It's awesome if you're nice to everyone. I believe that that is something that everyone needs to do a little more. But I also know that like there are certain people who will take advantage of that. And so those are the people that you have to take care of yourself from. Like you have to make sure that you're being nice, but you're not being a carpet or a rug for them to walk all over. You have to respect yourself enough so that you can, you know, put those barriers and, you know, love yourself enough and take care of yourself enough. And also something like on the flip side of that is like knowing if you're going to bring value to someone else's life. Are you really like in the right headspace or in the right mental space for you to be friends with someone or for you to be dating this person? Like that's really important to think about as well, because we always think about ourselves, but we don't know what we're doing to other people. Because whereas when I was friends with this girl, I was making her feel like she was on top of the world, but she was making me feel like I was like the worst person ever. And so there's like, we have to be mindful of that there's two sides to everything. Just like there's being too independent, there's being too codependent. We have to be mindful of both. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I was about to go off on a tangent there. I think that is like, yeah, that is really key, especially in friendships and in relationships as well. Like, or just, you know, I'm going back to the immigrant household, right? Like sometimes our parents have certain expectations of us as their children.
Yeah.
And, you know, I go to empathy right away because oftentimes, you know, just like education levels are different. You know, their communication skills is a little different, right? Like, and so maybe they're trying to communicate in their own way, but they don't know how to verbally just kind of like, effectively communicate, you know, what their expectations are, right? And even in friendships and relationships, you know, you can have an expectation of a friend, right? And, you know, that friend did not place that expectation. They don't know that it's mainly mental in your own mind of like, oh, I want him to be reaching out more, or I want him to, you know, have more free time for us to hang out, or, you know, in a relationship, I want my partner to communicate with me more, right? And I think that it ultimately falls on effective communication. Can you communicate with the other person about what your expectations are? But expectations is weird because I don't think you should have expectation. I think it's just like boundaries and like, yeah, I think maybe expectations falls into like relationships because you guys can talk about that a little bit more, but I don't quite know like how that falls into friendships. And if you're supposed to set certain expectations like that, I think it's just about having honest dialogue about, yo, like I really need you more in this season versus the next. And I think, as seasons changing, like, you know, you might need different things from different people, and people might need different things from you. So I think that healthy boundaries and effective communication is like the formula for success for that issue. But
Oh yeah. I mean, okay, a little bit on the expectations. I feel like you can have expectations on your friends, but it's not like you have to be a certain way. It's more of like, if we're friends, like, and we're close friends, say like inner circle friends, I expect you to call me out if I'm doing something wrong. That's
okay, yeah,
for in my head. Like if you're my friend, you're gonna call me out when I'm not doing something right, or when you feel like I'm like, doing something that's going to hurt me in the future, or something that's hurting others. Oh my God, I would hate if I was being like mean to someone and like no one was like, you're being hella rude, like stop. Like that would be not okay for me, because
yeah,
sometimes you say something and you don't even think twice about it, it just comes out. But if like you're around people and they like actually care about you and who you are, and hold you to a higher standard than people who don't know you, like they should be able to like call you out and do stuff like that. Like that's the only expectation I think I have of friends, is like that. I don't know. Let's see, another question. Are you able to like be interdependent? Like, is that something that you practice, or is that something that's like not really on your mind?
yeah. I think, to be honest, I think it's something that I struggle with, right? Um, I think I was thrown into leadership and leadership roles at a very young age. Like, it started with sports, right? And then it bled into different other aspects of life, school, kind of, you know, captains of certain clubs, or, you know, leaders of certain like organizations. And then even where I do now, like professionally, I kind of lead like a small group of employees at my job. And so it's like, it's a struggle for me, to be honest. And I think it's more of a journey. I don't think it's a destination where it's just like, I'm here and I'm interdependent, but I think that, it's kind of a give and take. And like I mentioned earlier, different seasons require different, requires of you at different levels. And so it's definitely a struggle, if I'm being honest. I think that at an earlier stage, I think it was just like taking over a PowerPoint and just like, no, I want my design to be like this in a group project or something.
Yeah.
And then now, in real life, I'm trying to be like, all right, how do I like, it's the same behavior in different spheres, right? Like that same attitude is like showing up when we're doing like I don't know, something dumb, like like a family trip or something. And I just want to like take the whole thing and just like hijack it. And I'm like, no, we're going here. I'm planning everything out. Like, this is what we're doing. I got an agenda prepped, all, stuff like that. And I think that behavior could be really toxic. It can be very detrimental to the ones around you. I don't think it's the most healthy thing to be doing, even though I kind of lean into that a lot. And I'm very cognizant of it, to be honest. And so, man, I didn't jump on this call for like a kind of like self-realization. I'm gonna have to go to therapy after this. But
I think that's the beauty of talking about things, is like you don't realize how you're doing until you start talking.
yeah, I think like I've always been really cognizant of the issue, and just like, oh man, I think I leave like group meetings a lot, like especially for work. And I said, oh man, I really cut this person off, when she was speaking. I hope that she doesn't, feel away. And I find myself doing that a lot. Like exiting a meeting, it's like, oh man, I hope I didn't come off too strong. Am I a jerk? Like, and then I start going through and I'm just like, man, I gotta find this healthy balance. But I think it's really crucial, especially when it comes to building relationships or, you know, trying to do something impactful in life. You know, you have to find that healthy balance where you can be stern yet graceful at the same time. You can be, you know, friendly yet set those boundaries that we talked about. And so, just finding that healthy balance. I'm not one to kind of say I found it. I think it's a journey, like I mentioned. You're kind of finding tips and tricks along the way. And so, yeah.
I think same as you, have been put into a lot of leadership positions in my life, in my young life. Something that I've learned is that I like when people listen to me. But because of that, since I want people to listen to me, I listen to people. And I think that's something that I was like, what? Like, you're smart. Is because, like, you know, that whole saying of like leading by example. If I want people to listen to me, I'm going to have to listen to whoever is above me. It's not always easy. Most of the time I'm like, yeah, sure, it could have been done this way, but like, yeah, no problem. Like, your way is the way we're going. It's not the bad way, but we're going with that one. Like, I will listen even if I don't want to, because I want people to listen to me. And then and I think that's like the best balance that I have. That in any situation, like, that's the best I can do, is just remembering that if I was in the situation of that person, like, how would I want to be treated? And so that's the same, like, empathy, like you said a while ago, is like always just having empathy, because, like, I don't want anyone to be mean to me, so I'm not going to be mean to anyone. I don't think it's right to judge anyone based on what you've seen. Like, have you, like, I don't know. I had a situation happen to me a few months back, and it was like the worst thing ever. I was trying to be a good friend, and it just didn't work out because I was so codependent with this person that I was like, yeah, like, I'm gonna be there for you, so, like, through and through, like, don't worry. And I learned that I was the codependent one, but they weren't. And so then that also, like, it's hard to be interdependent when it's not being like, what's the word? Like, you're not receiving that energy of like someone being dependent on you just as much as you are on them. Or like being able to trust someone when it feels like they don't trust you. I had a friend who, she was like, she had this situation with her boyfriend where he would accuse her of things, and she was like, it's so crazy because he was doing those things and I wasn't. But it really, like, messes with your brain. And if someone who is like accusing you of something or is giving you that energy, it's probably or accusing you of like having that kind of like, oh, you don't really like me, oh, you don't really like want to be friends with me, you're not giving me the best energy. Most of the time, some of the times, it's because they're insecure and they're doing that themselves to you. And that's something I've learned, is like, if I feel like I'm doing too much, it's probably because I am. When it comes to friendships and relationships. And it messes a lot with, you know, at least my mental health personally. I don't know how it like affects you or how that goes on in your head, but like, if I feel like I'm too invested in something, it really psychs me out, and I'm just like, ooh, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? Like, what's going on? Like, why am I not receiving that same energy? And I think that's kind of like also something I wanted to talk about today, is that like, it's not something that like has a direct correlation. Like, not because someone else is being flaky am I the one that's doing something. But that's the connection that a lot of people brains make, is this person is not talking to me as much, or this person seems to be a bit too busy now. Is it because I did something? Did I annoy them? Did I become too clingy? And that brings on a lot of anxiety, and then that leads to another thing. And so like, I think being so codependent and not having that balance of interdependence that I don't think many people have, really brings on a lot of, like, and I hate to use the word, but triggers to other illnesses, mental illnesses. And I just went on a rant, sorry.
No, I mean, you're dropping gems. Man, there's so much in there. Yeah, like I think that oftentimes in life we think of ourselves as the main character, right? Like we're just, we're just going through life. It's our life, right? And we just fail to, especially in today's day and age, like we fail to be empathetic. We fail to, take on different perspectives. And so, I kind of have like core principles in my life that, I try to live out day by day. And I think one is, stepping into or making friends with people who disagree, right? And so what that means is just like finding people who don't share the same values as me, don't share the same perspective as me, or the worldview as me, but finding why that is. And I think that takes a level of curiosity. It takes a level of self-awareness to kind of take that approach. And it's hard, right? Like, I don't want to go there. It's hard. It's hard to kind of navigate that, where it's just like, man, this person disagrees with me, and I thought we were really good friends, but they have some very strong beliefs that I strongly disagree with. But I think that there's such a healthy place in the middle ground there, where it's just like, okay, you have these core beliefs, I have these core beliefs, but why this relationship is meaningful is because we're able to lay down those beliefs and like come in the middle and just love each other for who we are. And then, you mentioned another point where just like this trigger of like, you mentioned like, she's not hitting me up, or like, what's going on? Am I not doing enough? Am I too clingy? And like, I've experienced that before. And I think that, again, going back to like, we're our own main character or superhero in this story, right? And it's just like, we fail to realize that everybody else in our sphere, in our life, like they got their own stuff going on. And oftentimes we can, project our own expectations of what we want from these people, our friends, our family, coworkers. But if we're not effectively setting healthy boundaries and effectively communicating that, we could be, doing more damage to ourselves, because we think Jenny doesn't like Jedi, and Jenny's just got like 40 hours a week of work to be doing, and she's busy with Tortilla Talks, and there's not really, something in between us, but it's just a matter of, she might be busy, or her priorities are family right now and not our friendship. And so it's a give and take. I think that what's worked with my friendships is constant communication, being in that group chat and just kind of always doing like we don't do a weekly check-in, but just kind of like making sure there's communication. Yo, anybody here, like dropping memes in our group chat, whatever it is, like as long as there's constant communication, I'm good. Right. Like, I think that like, because I know that eventually conversations will get to a place. If anybody needs help, my friends are pretty vocal about, when they need it. But so I think it again goes back to, protecting your own space, healthy boundaries, effective communication, and just kind of like, the mind is a crazy thing. So being able to, finding what works for you and kind of navigating in combating any sort of these thought streams that could lead you to a very negative place, especially when something minor can trigger you, to actually kind of you know, I'm a huge Marvel nerd, so it's like kind of like exit your body like Doctor Strange, and kind of see what's happening in your brain. Like, you know, why am I even feeling this way? Like, why am I thinking dark thoughts right now because I didn't get a text back or whatever? And so that's something I do, but everybody's journey is different, so it's very specific to them. But
Yeah. I think that last thing you just said was very, very key, is like being aware that you are the main character in your own story, but not in everyone else's. So like, it's very important that we be just aware that like everyone has stuff going on. Like, the biggest thing that I was like, you're right, like I needed to take a step back and evaluate myself, was one day last year when all of the protests were going on. I don't even know who I was having a conversation with, but it was my old boss. We were talking about how like people judge, especially Black women, because they seem to be so angry or whatever. And it's like, you don't know what they have to deal with on the daily. They're a person of color, they're a woman, and they have their own life struggles that comes on top of everything else. Like, we have to be aware that like maybe this person was mad or reacted a certain way to you doing something, but it wasn't because of you, it was just because that was their limit at that point. Like, how many times have you accidentally lashed out on someone, not because like what they did was like the end of the world, but like you just couldn't handle anymore. Like, that was just the tip of the iceberg, and like that was it. I don't know if you've seen this video on TikTok where it's like they pushed down this huge piece of glass, and it didn't break when they dropped it, but they like threw a hammer and it completely shattered the entire piece of glass, like once it was down on the floor. And it was like, when they dropped it, they were like, oh, all the trauma and all the horrible life experiences that I've had versus my friend or person not texting me back. And so it was like, all of this was like the big thing, but the little thing is what like triggered this huge outburst. And so we just have to be aware of the fact that like, you know, mentally, like, they could have gone off on you, but like, you're not really the reason. Like, you need to chill out. You're not that important in someone else's life all the time. And I think that's where being interdependent is like kind of like the goal, so that you don't take things too much to heart, where you can rely on people, but also realize that like you are the main character of your own story. And there's this quote that I hate, but it's so true. Like, is your day really bad, or did you let 5 seconds, like a bad moment, ruin your whole day? And it's annoying because I'm like, yeah, it was just a moment, but like, let me be sad all day. Like, let me experience my emotions. But it's true. Like, it's not always just because they didn't text you back, or just because you felt like you were doing too much. That doesn't mean that like you're the worst person in the world, or they are. You just got to find that balance.
Yeah.
Sorry, I talk a lot in these. Like, a lot.
Yeah, it's called Tortilla Talks for a reason. You're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, but I like rant. Like, I go off. Like, last week's was 30 minutes, and it was just because I kept on talking and talking. But I like it. I like talking.
It's your show.
Oh my God. Okay. Do you have anything else to add on?
Do you have any more questions?
When it comes to, and this is not just on the topic, this is just in general, when it comes to mental health,
Hmm.
mental illness, what's your like way of self-care, taking care of yourself?
Oh man. All right. So I got the nerdy answer. Um, and then I got like a more practical answer. Or not practical, but just like a overview. Um, so let's see. One, I think there's still a stigma, right? Like I think that like in the grand scheme of like the history of mental health and as like doing my own research and just being in school and having to write papers about certain things and uh, I was really into psychology for kind of like a season, and so um, anyway, um, one, mental health is real, and it's really important that conversations like these are happening on a grand scale to kind of create some normalcy around it and provide certain outlets and resources for individuals who are actually going through some real life issues. Life is tough, you know, and we're young, right? Like, but life is really hard, especially with a global pandemic, right? And especially with like race relations at an all time, I don't, in our lifetime at least, at an all time high. Um, you know, life is really difficult, and it's, it's quite ignorant to say that like with everything going on in the world that doesn't have some sort of mental effect on us. Um, and so it is real, one, and I think that certain communities and certain people are oftentimes uh, in that pool of individuals who experience these at a more severe level because of you know, lack of resources on it every day, and then mental health and everything comes in to play, so it compounds, right? um, you know, and who I'm talking about is like minority communities, right? Oftentimes we're so busy trying to survive that we don't get to thrive, we don't get to live, because we're so busy just trying to, you know, live paycheck to paycheck, or, you know, supporting my 16 kids that I have or whatever, you know. But your question was, before I go on my rant, is that what do I do on a day to day? I'm a huge believer in just kind of environment and setting a personal environment for myself. And so um, I like to. There's tons of research about being in sunlight early in the day. And for anybody who's watching who wants to nerd out, Andrew Huberman, he's a Stanford brain doctor, and he does a lot of good kind of research and science. He has his brain lab in Palo Alto, I think, and they do tons of study about how the effects of light early in the day gives you a boost of like all the right chemicals that you need. And I don't want to bore people with science, but that's something that works for me. Like I try to get up early. I try to get outside as early as possible. And then, you know, diet is something that's really important to me. Exercise are things that like I incorporate on my day to day. I've always had ADD, and so like, you know, getting outside, running, just like with no destination, just that helps me a ton. Um, and I think that, you know, on a deeper level, I think that content too, you know, oftentimes we invite certain things into our life through the content we consume, right? Like whether it's movies, music, oftentimes that has a really large effect as well. But that kind of plays the background. Like often, like if you're listening to, I don't know, some like emo music 24/7, I would think that has some sort of effect on your mood, on your state of being. And so um, for me, I try to keep it high frequency. I try to keep my environments and I mentioned it earlier, but kind of like protect my energy. And so going back to boundaries again, it takes some self-awareness to be like, okay, what am I going through? Why am I feeling this way? And I think that that takes work. Like it just does. I think that, you know, just like everything else, like the gym or, you know, dieting, like there needs to be some progressive steps, some planning, and then some implementation of the plan to get you in the right mindset. But also, I'm not a doctor, so there are, you know, I don't want to undermine what mental health actually is, and so please talk to a doctor and use all the available resources that are out there, because I don't want to just be like, oh yeah, you know, good diet and exercise will cover it, because you know, these issues are very, very big, right? And they differ at a wide spectrum, and so everybody's situation is different. But in my case, you know, setting a right environment and setting healthy boundaries is everything for me. And it's definitely something that in the quarantine I've been trying to implement a lot more of, and I think I've been doing pretty good with kind of upholding certain boundaries and you know, taking my daily walks and all that.
That's really good. I'm glad to hear that. And I feel like nothing you said was wrong. I think everyone just has to realize, like, just like everyone has their own struggles, everyone has their own way of dealing with them. So like what you said was perfect. um, yeah, I think we spoke a little bit about like taking care of yourself already. But I think it's really important that, like Jedi said, if you need help, go get it. Like, don't be ashamed, don't be afraid. Like, if you need help, go get it. That's number one. But if you feel like you can handle things, if you feel like you just need to put a little bit more structure in your life, or you just need to take things out, like, feel free to do that too. There's nothing wrong with like praying and meditating and, like, you know, figuring it out for yourself. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for opening your mind and talking and sharing what you needed to share. We hope to see you back soon in this.
Yes.
You know, I just think it's very important that these conversations are had. So if anyone wants us to talk about anything else in the future, please comment and let us know what you want us to talk about. If you have any questions, if you have any struggles, like, we're always here to talk. The point is to talk, like it's in the title. We need to have these conversations. We need to be able to become aware and educate ourselves on topics that for the most part are avoided and ignored, because it's so normalized that, you know, people just, you know, have their things. And I think we live in too much of an independent world, where people feel ashamed to go reach help and to talk to others even. And so let's just shift that and like realize that it's okay to talk and to get to, you know each other on a deeper, my God, I cannot talk, on a deeper level. So yes, thank you. And thank you. And yeah, thank you. Okay, hold on.